Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, a college campus lab in Florida turned into a transfer hub of illegal drug shipments to China. What we know about a multi-million-dollar scheme that's coming to light. Tens of thousands of Taiwanese gathered to protest outside Taiwan's parliament building after the government passed a reform package deemed as favoring Beijing. Details on the new legislation. Chinese military's robot dog making an appearance in a joint drill. The site echoes one of Beijing's tech goals to mass-produce cutting-edge robots in less than 2 years.
These areas are having a great step forward, if you like, in automation, but it's not really determining the strategic outcome.
And a Chinese national gets caught red-handed and now faces trial in South Korea. That's for allegedly smuggling microchip technology to China. Cocaine, fentanyl, and ecstasy. For 6 years, thousands of samples of these drugs were delivered to a lab at the University of Florida, then shipped to China. Now, the university has banned one suspect, a Chinese student, from entering the campus for 3 years. Her name is Nongnong Letitia Zhen. Court documents accuse her and 2 others of helping a man buy drugs at significant discounts, which then get illegally sold to China for a profit. Through them, the man, called Peng Yu or Ben, allegedly received over $4 million in discounts. The smuggled drugs include the deadly fentanyl, cocaine, and MDMA or ecstasy, among others. Zheng and her other co-conspirators were able to provide the discounts because they ordered through the university's stockroom. The U.S.-based biotech company offers these kinds of perks to university labs, benefits not available to the general public. After getting the discounted drugs, Ben is accused of repackaging them and then illegally shipping them to China. He also reportedly bribed a salesperson at the biotech company to facilitate the fraud. Both Ben and the salesperson pleaded guilty. Ben faces up to 20 years in prison and a $1 million fine. Zheng said she didn't know that she committed wrongdoing until the Justice Department told her she was being investigated, adding the DOJ said she could face prison or deportation. Zheng has not been formally charged. She was the president of the Chinese Student Association on the campus. The association was approved by the Chinese embassy. In a statement to NTD, the University of Florida said employees who break the law will be separated from employment, and students who break the law will face suspension. Taiwan's parliament is greenlighting a reform package. It aims to increase lawmakers' power to scrutinize the new president. At the same time, tens of thousands of Taiwanese gathered outside the parliament building protesting this decision. NTD's Taiwan correspondent Qiling Cheng has more.
A chaotic start to William Lai's presidency in Taiwan. He was sworn in last Monday. People have been gathering outside Taiwan's parliament over the last week. On Tuesday, thousands of people are gathering once again. They are not protesting against Lai. Instead, they are taking aim to the island's main opposition party that wants more power to scrutinize the new president. It highlights a major challenge Lai is facing. His party does not have a parliamentary majority. And here's the tricky part. Lai's ruling party strongly defends Taiwan's sovereignty, which angers China. Meanwhile, the opposition party is more friendly toward Beijing.
I was saddened by the bill's passage. I think they've been trampling on the Taiwanese people, our nation, and the homeland we strive to protect. Being too pro-China and trusting, as a result, good people were deceived by a predatory nation, and now they are so deeply brainwashed by the CCP that they can't go back. Hong Kong's example is already before us.
The look of my anti-tear gas respirator used during Hong Kong protests is not the future any of us want.
Some experts are concerned that the Chinese Communist Party will gain more influence on the island through the opposition party.
The blue and white legislative coup is a slow and long coup d'etat, a prolonged and continuous dismemberment of Taiwan's sovereign democratic system. It begins with a gradual erosion, leading to a complete takeover until the executive power is crippled and hollowed out, the judicial power is emasculated, and finally, parliamentary dictatorship is established. This is done in the name of public opinion, ultimately dismantling Taiwan's sovereign state system and voluntarily merging with China.
The blue and white parties refer to the island's opposition parties. They have been pushing the legislation. A series of protests against the measures erupted one day after the island's new president took office and continued throughout last week. Hong Kong police just arrested 6 people. City authorities accused them of, quote, inciting hatred against Hong Kong's leadership by posting on social media. Hong Kong's 6 arrests are the first to happen publicly under the city's newest security law passed in March. Hong Kong authorities didn't give details about the content of the social media posts, but the Facebook page in question had published posts marking the upcoming 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. One of those arrested was also an organizer of the city's Tiananmen Square massacre vigil. The event commemorates a 1989 protest movement where communist authorities gunned down unarmed students in China's capital after they had gathered to ask for democracy and better access to education. Hong Kong has commemorated the tragic event with yearly vigils for decades. The city's new security law punishes treason and insurrection with up to life in prison. It comes 4 years after a similar law drastically lessened the city's freedom. Beijing's military is flexing something new in a recent drill, a robot dog with an automatic rifle on its back. It obeys its commander's orders to run and jump and can even open fire on targets. But why create the armed robotic version of man's best friend? And how does the technology play into Beijing's military threat towards the West? Let's take a closer look.
China's state media CCTV posted this video 3 days ago. It was taken during recent joint drills between China and Cambodia. A statement from a Chinese soldier also published by CCTV said the robot, quote,
"It can serve as a new member in our urban combat operations, replacing our human members to conduct reconnaissance and identify the enemy and strike the target."
Military experts say robot dogs can significantly reduce risks for troops carrying out missions in unknown areas and can scout behind doors or around corners. Worth noting, the U.S. and Japan first showcases the same kind of robot in the 90s. Beijing also reviewed one of its first rifle-armed robot dogs last year. According to Chinese media, China's top institute, Tsinghua University, collaborated with the Chinese army to develop that technology. A number of countries accuse China of stealing intellectual property, especially from the U.S. Experts say Beijing's goal is to advance its military combat power.
For many years, the CCP has been aware of the huge gaps between the U.S. military and its own militaries in traditional domains, such as ground, maritime, and air forces. It's hard for them to catch up quickly, so the CCP has consistently pursued advancement in emerging fields such as AI, new energy, unmanned devices, the cyberspace, and humanoid robots, aiming for an asymmetrical advantage. Since the starting point in these fields are relatively close, the CCP sees an opportunity to catch up with or even surpass the U.S.
China announced a defense budget increase of over 7% 2 months ago. This comes after Beijing proposed an over 7% increase to military spending this year, totaling $220 billion and making China's the second largest defense budget after the U.S. Beijing said last October that one of its goals is to mass produce cutting-edge robots by 2025.
How big of a threat are China's rifle-equipped robot dogs in modern warfare, and what's behind China's expanding military arsenal and the increasing allegations of its technology theft? We dive into these questions with Gregory Copley, president of the International Strategic Studies Association. Gregory Copley, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Wonderful to be back with you, Tiffany.
Now, China's military is showing off robot dogs that are equipped with rifles. Now, this isn't necessarily new, as last year China's military also had robot dogs, and back in 2020 the U.S. Air Force has used robot dogs to scout ahead for potential traps. But what do you make of this latest iteration with the rifles? What does this mean? Can this change modern warfare?
Not really. I mean, you could see the advantage of having remotely controlled weapon systems going into urban warfare situations. Now, you still have to get into those situations, and for the People's Republic of China, that's more applicable to a domestic security situation. If they're talking about these kind of weapons for an invasion of Taiwan and the Republic of China, it still doesn't help them get ashore. But the reality is that these kind of urban warfare assistance are pretty marginal in their impact. It's not going to determine the outcome of a war between the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, for example. And it's not new technology in any shape or form. Of course, artificial intelligence is going to enhance weapons platforms going forward, and more of them will be unmanned.
Looking now at China's growing military arsenal, how much of that is stolen U.S. tech? Reports are noting China did just that to build out its J-20 fighter jet, which is akin to the U.S. F-22 Raptor. What's your view on this?
Well, certainly the People's Republic of China has expended an enormous amount of its intelligence budget in gathering the technology of the West, not just the US, but from the West generally, just as the United States did the same thing in stealing European and particularly British aerospace and defense technology in, throughout the 20th century, basically. So this is what great powers do to get ahead of the game. Right now, the People's Republic of China is as dependent, if you like, on former Soviet and current Russian technology as it is on Western technology. And the J-20 fighter, for example, whilst it may look like it's comparable with the F-22, and the F-22, by the way, is now old technology. It's been surpassed in many directions, but the J-20 has very, very poor engine capability, and the Russians will not supply the updated engine technology to Beijing, which means that the J-20 is a great airshow aircraft, but it's not a durable one for the conduct of any protracted warfare. So essentially, there's a very great hollowness in much of the technology we're seeing in the People's Liberation Army, whether it's in the aircraft, where they have undoubtedly stolen large quantities of US and Western technology.
Gregory Copley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tiffany.
A Chinese national is on trial in South Korea for allegedly smuggling microchip technology to China. Officials said the suspect once worked for chipmaker SK Hynix before taking a job at Chinese telecom giant Huawei. The suspect was arrested back in April. She joined South Korea's SK Hynix in 2013. The team she worked with did business at a local subsidiary in China for about 2 years. She later left the company and returned to South Korea, later getting hired by China's Huawei. Prosecutors accuse her of stealing technology designed to analyze chip defects. According to police, she allegedly printed more than 3,000 pages of data related to that technology. South Korea remains the world's second largest semiconductor maker. The nation supplies some of its most cutting-edge logic and memory chips to China with the help from Samsung and SK Hynix. In recent years, China has been working to make its own chip industry self-sufficient and take over as the globe's top semiconductor maker, while the West seeks to limit its access to critical technology. Apple's iPhone shipments in China appear to have jumped more than 50% in April compared to a year earlier. This is according to data from a Chinese regime-affiliated research firm. Apple is not explicitly named, but is the dominant phone maker in China's smartphone market. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. North Korea attempting to launch a new spy satellite and failing. That's just hours after South Korea, Japan, and China reaffirmed their stance on North Korea's denuclearization during a rare summit. China's aerospace ambitions are hitting new heights, hoping to challenge Boeing's throne. A military expert reveals startling predictions about China's plan to rival the longtime giant.
The Chinese Communist Party wants all of this. It wants to dominate the global market for airliners in order to advance its much larger goals for global hegemony.
And this year marks the 35th year since the Tiananmen Square massacre. Hear from participants at an event in San Francisco on why the deadly crackdown shouldn't be forgotten. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.